Hi, I'm Dr. Shelley Meyer. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about hair loss, hormones, and healing. So on this channel we talk about gut health, hormone health, and gene health. And hair loss is one of the most common things that I see patients for. I'm a functional medicine physician, family physician, registered dietitian, and nutritionist. So I see a lot of folks in the office and I've helped a lot of people work on the things that we're going to talk about today. So if you haven't checked out our channel before, those are the things we talk about. So we'd love it if you would subscribe and hit the bell notification to be notified when we have future videos that come out every Thursday. And then we would love to hear from you if you have any comments or questions. So let's dive in today though. We're going to go through hormones that contribute to hair loss, how we can work on those hormones and how we can identify what ones might be contributing. We are also going to talk about some nutrients like vitamins and minerals and how those can affect hair loss. And then at the end, we'll have some tips on what you can do to potentially stop the continuation of hair loss you might be having and then regrow hair. So stay tuned till the end and we'll talk about that. So let's talk a little bit about the hormones that can contribute to hair loss. So one of the major ones is cortisol. So cortisol imbalances I see quite frequently in my practice, and it often comes from physiologic stress, maybe some chronic disease or chronic stresses on the body, but more often, mental stress, stress, from our stressful lives that we have, can cause cortisol imbalances. So what is cortisol? It's a stress hormone. So when we have hypocortisolism, we can see patchy hair loss kind of in patches throughout our head and then crown and the scalp area. And then when we have hypercortisolism, we can see kind of a diffuse kind of shedding hair loss. So another important hormone when we're thinking about hair loss is the thyroid. So people will quite frequently associate thyroid with hair loss, and it's a very common presenting symptom. So usually if we're having hair loss with thyroid issues, we have hypothyroidism, so low thyroid function. And I did do a video on the natural solutions to thyroid disease. So if you're concerned about your thyroid or have been diagnosed with thyroid disease, that's a good one to check out, and we'll link that below. So the other ways that low thyroid can present, or hypothyroidism can present, is depression. Sometimes it's joint pain, oftentimes fatigue. So if you have fatigue and hair loss, that you definitely want to get your thyroid checked out. And then constipation can be part of it too. And thyroid is easy enough to check through standard blood work. Oftentimes insurance will cover it, so your provider should be able to check for that. I like to do a more complete thyroid panel to really know what's going on with TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, free T3, free T4, and reverse T3. So I think that's the best way to check out the thyroid as far as labs go. So another hormone that can contribute to hair loss would be testosterone. So that kind of male pattern baldness at the crown of the head is common with elevated testosterone, particularly something called DHT. The testosterone can be transferred or goes down the pathway to form DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone. And when we have too much of that, then we have some of that male pattern baldness, like we said. So women can have that too. And then you can also have like a diffuse kind of hair loss shedding that is associated with abnormal testosterone as well, with that abnormal DHT that it's being converted to. So we want to check DHT, and that can be done via blood work, or there's another test that I really love that I'm going to talk about at the end. That's my preferred way of checking hormones. So testosterone is important to consider. We also want to think about estrogen. So estrogen dominance in particular, I did talk about that on a prior video where the estrogen kind of takes over and the progesterone then isn't able to do its job because the estrogen is being so dominant in the whole picture. So then progesterone can't protect that hair follicle, and the progesterone then has a pathway that it protects against the hormones going down. But if it's not able to be there like it should, then some of the conversion to that DHT happens, and you get more of that pattern that I was talking about just a moment ago. So estrogen dominance, important to consider that. And then insulin. So if your insulin's high, sometimes we can, with women in particular, we have well, women are the only ones with ovaries. So when insulin is high, ovaries can overproduce that DHT as well. So, we think about insulin with blood sugar, but it's not always, or not the only thing we need to think about. Insulin affects a lot of other things as well. So checking your fasting insulin level with your provider, and that's easy to do via blood work. That's another important thing to do. So other things we can check for that aren't hormones are ferritin, your storage form of iron, and then also your iron studies. So just regular iron, total iron binding capacity, and iron saturation. And those are cheap and easy ways to check with blood work if there's mineral deficiencies. And iron is a big one that can contribute to hair loss. And you can be deficient in iron from diet, from menstrual bleeding, from if you've had surgery and you've had that kind of bleeding. If your liver's taxed and just working really hard to detoxify, then you can be low in your storage form of iron. And then some people, their guts aren't absorbing well. So when we talked in one of the last videos about gut function, that really does kind of seep over into our absorption and all of our other hormone pathways, because if we're not absorbing our minerals and our guts aren't able to detoxify like we should, then we can see these deficiencies and then therefore some physical symptoms from that. Also, we want to think about B vitamins. B vitamins are commonly supplemented, just, people just do it. They just grab it off the counter. They say, this is the hair supplement, I'm going to take that. And sometimes those hair supplements could be mega dosed in B vitamins, but you do want to think about B vitamins and getting those checked out if you're having hair loss. Now, B vitamins correlate a lot of times with the hormonal imbalances and sometimes thyroid imbalance. So it's not usually isolated by itself. If you're deficient in Bs, it could be from stress, hormones, and it could be from the gut as well. So nothing's all that simple. So looking at those things, vitamins or minerals, is important too. Now, what else can we do to look at these patterns? So the hormone test I was going to tell you guys about is called the Dutch test. It stands for dried urine testing for complete hormones. And I do this test all the time. I love it. It's really good for looking at that estrogen pathway and seeing if it's going down a healthy pathway or an unhealthy pathway. Same thing with the testosterone. So it shows us that DHT and is in both women and men, are they overforming that androgenic kind of testosterone that can contribute to hair loss and other symptoms. And it also shows us cortisol. It's a really great measure of cortisol. It can show us the pattern of cortisol. We're supposed to start out with cortisol being high in the morning and then kind of leveling off throughout the day so that we can be, less energy at night and go to sleep. Now, I see a lot of flipped cortisol patterns, and the Dutch test is a great way to look at those patterns, and it really shows us how the cortisol is broken down or how it's converted. Is it converting to cortisone? Is it being stored? Is it more free cortisol? That is the problem. Or like I said, is it imbalanced and flipped in certain times of the day? So the Dutch test is a great way to look at the cortisol patterns. If someone, your provider, tries to test your cortisol via just blood work, that's not as great of a way to look at it. So I really suggest either doing it via this urine type of testing, or there's a lot of companies that will make saliva tests for cortisol. So either one of those are the preferred ways to check for cortisol. We can look for the nutrients through either the standard blood work like I was talking about. That's not as great for vitamin and mineral levels. It's fine for ferritin and iron, but for the B vitamins, it's not as great. So with the B vitamins, I look for, or with micronutrients in general, I like to look at SpectraCell or NutriVal. Those are some great ones to consider. And those are functional medicine labs. So usually you'd be working with a functional medicine provider or a naturopath to get those done. So those are some great ways to look for those patterns and see if that's what's causing your hair loss. And then some tips and things you can do at home to hopefully halt this hair loss and maybe even regrow some hair is to consider adaptogenic herbs. Those are herbs like ashwagandha, we talked about in the thyroid video, rhodiola, holy basil, all great things to help balance the cortisol and help the cortisol function better, and they can help the thyroid too. sometimes help the kind of trickle down into the sex hormones as well. And then zinc. Zinc can help repair damaged hair follicles. So zinc is a great one to consider if your hair has been damaged. Biotin, like I talked about before, and biotin in particular with silica in supplements like BioSil or other ones like that that have the silica and the biotin in them. Sorry, my tongue's getting all jumbled here. So some of the hair, skin, and nail supplements have a little bit too much of some ingredients that really don't work, and you're kind of wasting your money. So better to stick with those ones that I've mentioned that really do work, and to make sure you're not over supplementing. So getting those levels checked, because those are easy to check. Vitamin A and C can help build collagen, so those can be very helpful. Looking for nutritious source or food sources of those, like yellow and orange fruits and vegetables, can be a great way to get that. And then you can also get some multivitamin or an antioxidant vitamin in safe levels, and talk about that with your provider to then boost the vitamin A and C and the collagen. Definitely, we want to also think about food. Flaxseed in particular can help balance that estrogen level, so that's a great thing to add to your diet. Pumpkin seed can help reduce the DHT, that dihydrotestosterone. So eating pumpkin seed butter, putting it into smoothies is lots of great ways to sneak that in. And, eating lots of good fiber, because that can help the gut bacteria thrive and help you have a more balanced gut. If you know that there's any food triggers that cause your body stress, definitely look into those and try keeping those out of your diet. And then dealing with, physiologic, not necessarily, well, just dealing with stress in general, the typical way that we think about stress. So relaxing as much as possible, doing deep breathing. We like to teach this 4-7-8 breathing, where you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 7, you breathe down into the belly, you hold it for 7, and you exhale for 8. And that's kind of like deep yoga breathing, and that's really great for resetting cortisol and balancing hormones. We also like to make sure you're getting enough sleep. So sleeping between 6 and 8 hours a night, preferably 7 to 8 hours is best, and good quality sleep. And then just getting rid of toxic relationships that might be causing you stress, setting boundaries, not overdoing it, just being really good and kind to yourself. That's very important. And then there's some interesting things that have been tried in studies too. Onion juice has been tried in studies. People applied it to their scalps, and they definitely saw a reduction. The majority of the people in the study saw a reduction in hair loss and some good growth there too. And then a better smelling idea was a study that is a essential oil blend that was used in a study where 90% of the subjects were able to see improvement in hair loss. And that combined a carrier oil, jojoba oil is a good one. But the oils that they used, the essential oils, were lavender, cedarwood, rosemary, and thyme. And they had subjects apply that to their scalp and massage it in. So you get the benefit of that massage too. And like I said, 90% of the subjects did see improvement. So there's some different things you can try, particularly stress reduction being very, very important. And so if you have any questions about those tests, just let me know, or any comments or suggestions for future videos. I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love for you to subscribe if you're interested in the topics that I discuss, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next Thursday.